It's actually a PDF. Okay, very good afternoon to everybody, and I hope we still got some people listening to the symposium.
There's 43 of them.
43. Okay, that's very nice.
Say again, Hans.
Right in the beginning,
43. Okay, that's very nice. Okay, right in the beginning, in August 2009, Hans, you will remember when we were sitting in Cape Town. I think that was possibly the last RTA, where we decided that Shaq and Isaac needed a new name. And when we landed the next day at Jan Smuts, I came up to you and I said, what about the acronym RADAR and for Rapid Deployment Amateur Radio? That is where a radar was born. So we've come a long way. That's 15 years. And in April 2012, I proposed that radar consists of movements, that you go to a particular point and
initially it was one contact, but to make it
deploy there and make my 5 contacts. Initially it was 1 contact, but to make it easier for our participants, that became 5 contacts. I'm just going to switch off my... Okay, we're still there.
Now, listening to Chris's presentation,
okay.
I realized that...
Now, listening to Chris's presentation, I realized that, and quite rightly so, that radar is no way a contest. And I always called it a challenge, because radar is totally different to what Chris mentioned in his previous presentation. So let me go to the next slide here. Do you see the next slide there, Hans?
I think you also did that. You went to AI to...
Okay, great. Now, I think you also did that. You went to AI to download some AI-generated pictures. And this is quite appropriate. And this discussion will be less about specific hardware, but concentrating more on a minimalistic approach with the objective of making radar attractive to novice hands. And I think that is very, very important. We're celebrating 100 years now, and what about the next 100 years? A lot of us won't be here within a few years' time anymore, and we need the young guys to take over from us. So again, the minimalistic approach requires going back to basics, and that is the Morse code. So my drive here is going to be very much about the Morse code, which I believe is the glue that keeps us going for decades. Very recently, there was an advert on the South African Radio League swap shop for an IC705, and there's been quite a few recently for IC705s advertised there. And it's quite shocking here, really, to see that this is actually second-hand equipment. And there's a whole bunch of things, the backpack and all the accessories, and we're talking about 32 grand here. Now, young novice operators are certainly not going to go for this. Talking about Zygu, well, we'll just ignore that make name and make no further mention of Zygu. Okay, so I think if we go to the next slide, PRP multi-mode radios are physically small, lightweight and easy to carry. If we look at the picture on the right-hand side there, that is the FD817ND, note ND, and the Z817ATU, which I used for over a decade. And that is what I built radar on. That radio did everything for me. I could even communicate via the linear satellites on SSB or CW, like FO29 or AO7 with that radio. Even if I had to work what they call half duplex, where you transmit on a fixed frequency and you tune the downlink. And that I did many radar deployments working through satellites using that radio. They consume a lot less power, they need small batteries, but unfortunately the FT817s are still very expensive, even second-hand. And unfortunately too, I sold mine for a very good price to a very good friend. And the 817ND was the most ideal rig that I ever had, and a huge advantage doing any radar event. We have a look at the hamburger there. My ex-YL, Elrika, she came in from town that one day, and she delivered a hamburger for me for lunch while I was doing my radar challenge. The ground sheet there was donated to me by Dennis. That is for Bravo Sierra, an ex-army ground sheet, and that has come in very, very handy quite often.
Chris was talking about all
right now we come. It'll be quite strange. Chris was talking about all these fantastic radios and dual receivers, and here I'm going downhill or reducing the requirement step by step. We're talking about the QCX here, which is developed by QRP Labs. There's quite a few models. There's a QMX in the picture. I have the QCX. Now these rigs come in kit form, or they can come in pre-built form as well. I built the original QCX, and I would say it is a little bit advanced for novice radio amateurs, especially winding the toroids. The main toroid is quite sophisticated. I managed to build mine, but then I had to change the winding, and that basically destroyed the PC board. So I opted this time to go for a pre-built QCX, and that is the rig that I actually use now. Now we talk about the budget for novice radio amateurs. A pre-built unit will probably cost you about $2.5 grand, around about 1.8K for a kit form QCX. So it can fit the budget of a novice radio amateurs, young guys that are just coming into the hobby. But I've got a new surprise on the next slide here. A few years ago, I built a 49er. This is a QRPP, as they would call it, and it was 1.3 watt transceiver that runs on 7023 megahertz. It's a CW radio, so obviously you must be able to do Morse code in order to use the radio. It's very, very small, very lightweight, very easy to carry, and it runs off a 9-volt battery, and absolutely fits in the budget of a novice radio amateur. In fact, these kits were going, I don't know what they cost now, but they were going for 150 Rand a piece. Now what is nice about these kits, they use basic components, very easy to assemble and give a sense of achievement once you build this radio and use it. And you can communicate with somebody. There is no better sense of achievement than doing something like this. But what is also nice about the 49er, it's got little toroids. You can see two in the picture there, which you have to wind yourself. Scrape off the enamel wire and solder it onto the PC board and make sure you've got connectivity there, which is always a problem with toroids and enamel wire. And the late John Smith, ZS6 Bravo November Sierra, I was in contact with him once using this little 49er. And me here on the right, on the western side of the Northwest Province. John was in Centurion. He gave me a 5.9 plus 10 dB signal report, and John was very accurate with his signal reports. So it goes to show that if conditions are okay, and you can do pretty well with 1.3 watts. Now that's absolutely a lot lower than 5 watts, which we use. Okay, let's go to the next. Now, a very good friend of mine, Mike ZS6, Mike Sierra Whiskey, and we promote CW, and we've got quite a drive, and sometimes very enthusiastic, but we get a lot of comments on the Radio League forum, like, yeah, you're not going to steal CW training away from their club. Now, or another operator would come and say, well, CW is alive and well in South Africa, but we choose who to speak to. Now, with this kind of attitude, how on earth are we going to attract a new generation of CW operators with this attitude? Now, if I think back to, like, for example, 2009, the South African Radio League and the South African Radio Amateur Radio Development Trust supported me fully for the development of radar, and also for spreading the word for satellite operations. Now, we seem to feel that we get not enough support from the Radio League for furthering the ideals of CW. Now, many people might think that CW is an old way of,
like I said before,
very outdated.
I really do believe that CW is the glue that keeps
us like I said before, I really do believe that CW is the glue that keeps us together. I'm in my 51st year of amateur radio now. I had my anniversary on the 17th of February this year, which makes me feel quite good. The Radio League is celebrating 100 years, and I'm celebrating 50 years. I won't see another 50, obviously, but I would like to see that amateur radio continues. But we need the young people. We need people to get excited about what amateur radio is. Okay, unfortunately, there are a few CW operators in South Africa, but they don't necessarily support radar. That is also an AI developed image there, where I see, radar operator goes out into the field. There's nobody to talk to. You can go and set up his antennas quickly and put out his and set up his radios, but nobody comes back to him. He goes and sits on a rock there and watches the animals walk by. AI generated animal, that as well. What cute, really. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
The monkey story where monkey climbs a ladder to get.
We've all heard about the monkey story where a monkey climbs a ladder to get the banana, and the other monkeys kind of not happy about that. Why is there resistance among radio amateurs for CW? Some people like to dream and want to inspire others to take on the challenge of Morse code. So, climb the ladder and share in the fruits that Morse code offers. And I would like to see a little bit less negative comment, especially on the forum, for these aspirations to try and attract people to at least take on the challenge of Morse code. And the negativity isn't limited to a few. We've got some council members that actually take part in the bashing as well. If we look back many years ago, we used the forum to advertise Shaq and Sack. We used the forum to advertise PRP for radar, for satellite operations. We don't see that anymore. People have gone to their private little WhatsApp groups, and they've got their little groups, and they inspire each other there. But we haven't got this center place where we can all come back to and inspire each other for the purpose of amateur radio. So I'd really like to see more support from the South African Radio League for Morse code because we can't see it as an outdated form of communication. That is where it all starts. And that, young people can start at the level that I'm talking of here, and maybe one day they might come out to the level that Chris was talking about in the previous presentation. They, like our late friend Pierre, ZS6 Alpha, he had the saying, there are horses for courses, and obviously that is quite true. Not everybody's going to do radar, but maybe you might get a few, and my feeling is a very few that might take on the contesting at the level that Chris was talking about.
This was also an AI.
Okay, let's go to our next slide here. Now, this was also an AI-driven image.
Very interesting that you can also AI
to deep AI to generate these images, and very interesting that you can also AI to draw a Morse key. It doesn't know about Morse key, but it knows a lot about keyboards, about computer keyboards. Now, this particular image, the shape of that young man's hand looks like he's sitting on a Morse key. So I was very, very lucky to get this image, and the old gentleman there trying to show him how to use the key. That's the idea of the image. From Cape Town Amateur Radio Club's Rag Tune newsletter, I extracted the text. Like Morse code is practiced by hams less now than in the past. It is used by the older hams who had to use it as part of the qualifying process to get licensed as a ham. It was a good thing that these good gentlemen and a few ladies still practice this form of communication. Yeah, they still practice. These are older hams. They're still practicing amateur radio using Morse code. And then they say, to the amazement of the newer hams as they demonstrate this hard-learned skill. Now, if I think back to 1974, my dad took me to the Johannesburg Town Hall, and there was a hobbies fair. And as we came through the door, there was an amateur radio stall there, and somebody was talking on the radio using Morse code. Now, that was, to my amazement, of the people sending and receiving Morse code, and that's why I'm still a radio amateur and I still promote Morse code. Now, I typed hard learned here in red. My son, when he was still interested in ham radio as a young boy, there was the ZU licenses where they write an RAE, but they had to do 5 words per minute. Now, interesting, my son learned 5 words per minute Morse code in 1 week, and he passed the test. I've still got his certificate. So it's not a hard-learned skill. You just have to have the passion and the will to learn Morse code. And that's up to the individual themselves if they really want to. Now, a few years ago, there was a guy, Marcus Kessler, NX5 Mike Kilo, I think Marcus's call sign was. He discovered radar through the internet, and we had a chat, and he took radar to America. And after that, Greg Lane, N4KGL, has promoted radar from that point on. And they started the radar rally. They also do the rally twice a year, in April and in November. And what Greg did, and very much in line with contesting, Greg defined contest rules for the radar rally. And I wrote this system for him, which is very similar to our cool system. It has all the rules built in for the radar rally. It would allocate points for the type of category that you are doing. You've got a radar station talking to a home station, you get 1 point. And if you contact the soda station, you probably get 2 points. If it's a radar to radar contact, then you would get 3 points, and so on. And then, of course, you had to, from the original design of radar, exchange a grid locator. And I've built in that as well. If the grid locators match, and everybody logs their contacts, of course, that is a necessity, then the system automatically evaluates the accuracy of the log entry and also the accuracy of the exchange. And those points are later evaluated by the evaluator system.
The next slide here.
So, if we go into the next slide here,
which is also very similar to our pool.
We've got the Radar Rally online evaluator, which is also very similar to our pool. That once everybody has entered their logs, and we just dial in the contest date here and the contest times, and we click on the submit button, and within a second or two, the whole radar challenge of all the entrants, be it from Europe or America or South Africa, are evaluated within a second or two. And you have the result.
Last year I promoted
here in South Africa, last year I promoted the cool, and I gave the advantages of using the cool for our contest. You know, nothing like Chris was talking about just now. Our contests are relatively simple, I would say. You might go and exchange your province, for example, or your name, or grid locator, like most of them are 6-character grid locators. We have comments on the forum as well. I don't want to see where my friends are logging. I don't want to know who they spoke to. I don't want to check on whether their QSLs are correct. Some other guy would say, well, I keep my logs on paper. Or some extreme people might say, I don't need to put my logbook out on social media for everyone to inspect. The contacts that I make are no one else's business. Now, I've seen absolute minimum support for the concept of the idea of online logging from the general South African amateur radio community. Not one contest admin this year in the contest manual has taken on this idea. They don't have to use the cool, they can write their own.
On this new slide,
or similar.
The cool has expanded a little bit from the last.
On this new slide, the cool has expanded a little bit from the last presentation I did. Now the cool comes from Radar Sport. It was actually developed very much like what I did for the Radar Rally for the South African conditions. But where we have expanded on, we've got a mini workable ZS system which I brought into the cool as well. What I did, I spent 2 months developing a new system for the South African Radio League's workable ZS certification. And I discovered there that the South African Radio League's database of workable ZX contacts wasn't a true reflection of some of the the certificates that were issued, and what I found is that it isn't a true reflection of many of the contestants or participants in Workable ZS. That outside influence, like logs from Logbook of the World, were taken into account for the certificates. And it's all good like that, but it's a South African Workable ZS, and my feeling was that I'm wasting my time there, and I terminated the project with the South African Radio League, and I built the mini Workable ZS certificate into the cool. And that the requirement there is that you have to log on the cool your certification is evaluated on the cool as well.
Some people might not understand what the purpose of the cool is. So I was writing a Q&A
Some people
system
might
for a friend
not
of mine.
understand what the purpose of the cool is. So I was writing a Q&A system for a friend of mine. So I
What the cool is.
built that into the cool as well, where you can go and do a quiz
for the
on
quiz.
what the cool is.
Click on the
And
print
if you get more than 80% for the quiz, then you can click on the print certificate and you get
presented to you in a
your
PDF
certificate
format where you can
immediately
print yourself as well.
presented to you in a
This kind
PDF
of thing
form,
can be
format
used for
where that you can print for
contesting
yourself as
You
well.
don't have to wait
Now,
2 weeks
this kind of thing
to a month for
can
the
be
results
used
of a
for
contest.
contesting as well, but you don't have to wait
like I say,
2
people don't
weeks
have
or
to use
to a
the
month
system
for the
and
results of
write
a
your own
contest.
test. We
But, like I
the
say,
second
people
100
don't have to
years,
use the
and we're
system,
still
they can write their own. But,
sending
we in the second 100 years, and we're still sending
evaluation by the contest admins.
spreadsheets for evaluation by the
Also back
contest
to the
admins.
previous slide,
Um,
there was an
we'll go also back to the previous slide.
contest,
Um,
international contest.
There was an ARRL
CW
CW contest, international contest, and I made 1 or 2 contacts there. I'm not a contester.
You have to upload.
And their requirement was that you have to send them, you have to upload a Cabrillo file. And I looked at the requirements there, and I wrote a Cabrillo download facility for the cool. So if I take part in the local contests, I enter my logs into the cool, and then I select them, and I generate a Cabrillo file, and I send that off to the contest admins. So far they've accepted it, but I've made a point of never, ever again sending in an Excel spreadsheet. But fortunately, the contest admins see the value in a Cabrillo file at least.
The aim.
So we go, now what is the aim of participating in a radar event? Now, here we got to think about the novice operators again. So I've always made a point that after the guys do their RIE, then they do their practical, that doing something like this, building a 49er, and he can go and add his own little box for the thing, or building a little audio amplifier, or build an end-fed tuner that he can hook up to the 49er, and then he goes out a kilometer away and sets up his little end-fed and his 49er and his Morse code key, and he makes contact with somebody. It'll teach him propagation evaluation. I mean, we had a presentation by Brian, said it's 6YZ, I think it is, on propagation that was very, very intensive. My feeling was that, if inverse is available, then you're certainly going to get the message through. And that is the point of radar. You've got to go out there. You're not going to take a tower with you or a beam or a 1 kilowatt radio or amplifier and big batteries. You're going to go out there with the absolute minimum, and you must exchange accurate information. So you've got to go and plan your outing as strategically as possible, and put yourself and equipment to the test. Evaluate your readiness and progress. You must be able to just pick up your bag, run out for a kilometer, set up, and exchange information. Yesterday I did exactly that. I was building a little power pack for my QCX with some alkaline batteries, and I tested the voltage there, 12.87 volts from those batteries. They were new, fortunately. And Hans, I remember that exact meter, I think it was in Cape Town, where there was a lucky prize draw, and my number was called, and I went out there, and I was thinking in terms of radar, and there was a very simple voltage tester, and there was this meter, and I saw the concern in your eyes that I was going to go for the simple tester, and I chose this meter. I still have it here, and it's still using its original battery as well. And I went out. I've got a little piece of belt here next to where we live, and I went out there and I plugged in my newly built battery into the QCX. I've got a bazooka 40 meter antenna built with coax that stands permanently out in the bush. At one stage, that little squirrel come running past, and he like almost like as if he had brakes on. He stopped running, and he was right next to my chair there, and he looked at me, and for a couple of seconds, wondering what I was doing there. And then he ran up into the tree and watched me from there. Now, the final,
if you log your contact with somebody, especially confirming the contact.
If you log your contact with somebody, especially confirming the contact, that is the final.
Caring for the other guy on the other side.
I'm trying to think of a word, but caring for the other guy on the other side is logging your contact. And I two QSOs with this little QCX running 5 watts. One was with Ed ZS6UT and also Mike ZS6MSW. I alerted them to the deployment I was going to do a few minutes before, half an hour before, and we both logged our contacts on the cool. People seeing the open view can see the activity there, and Mike and I, we exchange grids as if it is done in a radar challenge, not a contest, in a challenge. And the cool was originally designed actually for radar sports, so our exchange was automatically evaluated. We have yes over there in the check column, and also the accuracy of the log entries between myself and Ed and Mike has been evaluated as being correct as well. So it's not as if we're bragging how many contacts we make on the system. It is actually sharing that we are actually active. Just the next day, I saw that our very good friend Woody, ZS6 Whiskey Lima, had made contact with SOTA guys. And I was very excited to see that Sid, ZS6 AYC, and Adele, ZS5APT, are still active doing SOTA, but unfortunately they don't log on our system. It would be very, very nice if they did, but we've got a small group that do.
What I'm presently doing.
Okay, so we've been speaking about this cool. What I'm presently doing, I'm actually writing a book on the cool. That is the title of my book, and I asked AI to what I envisage what the outside of the book must look like, and AI drew this picture for me. So I'm busy writing it, and it starts where I had an interview with Eric Guth from Israel. He runs QSO today, and this was actually episode 28, where the whole transcript, I think, has been textified with AI as well. So I pulled in that text, and I'm busy fixing the text that it's readable. And that's where the book starts, and then it's going to introduce the cool and all its advantages. Well, I don't think there's any disadvantages. So the cool stands for the Community Online Open Logbook. The idea originated from a presentation done at the QSA today, Virtual Hamfest in 2021. Now, the interview I had with Eric, I think it was in 2015. So Eric and I have been talking for a couple of years now, and I hope he's okay with the war going on in Israel. I think he's still active with his QSO today. So that was when online evaluations of the radar challenges, not contests, were proposed. So we've come a long way.
So I would
We're
like
in
to say thank
2025
you
now.
for my story. I would like to see more support.
So I would like to say thank you for listening to my story. I would like to see more support for CW. We started the cool CW Operators Club. Strangely enough, you know, I had this ICOM 7200, which I bought secondhand a couple of years ago. And it's been sitting in the shack, but 100 watts doesn't attract me at all. And certainly 1 kilowatt doesn't. Fancy beams and towers I've always used in 50 years, the maximum of 100 watt radio, and mostly inverted V's and NFEDs and so on. So my first contact after passing 50 years was with Mike, and this is the QSL that is generated by the cool system. My 7200 started playing up. It had power on problems, very, very strange. I heard a relay chattering there, and power off problems as well. But we managed the QSO, and then the next QSO that I had with Mike, I was running 100 watts, and the radio died right there and then. And that is why I'm using the QCX. So I'm very much like in the position presently as a novice radio amateur. And that's what I'm promoting through this presentation, is that we've got to inspire young people to start from the beginning. Just the other day, I was thinking of Mitchell ZS6 Yankee Hotel. Wow, this guy was a real contest operator. It was impressive. And I thought, you know, where is Mitchell now? And I went looking for him, and he doesn't seem to be active anymore. And he was really a young go-getter, but maybe he started too high. I see he also had beams and towers and TS2000, I think it is, on his QRZ.com profile. But my feeling is this, that if we have young operators and they start with a 49er, they might stay with a 49er. Certainly, I'm staying with a QCX. I have no intention of getting a 100 watt radio again.
Thank you, guys.
And that is how I'm going to be operating radar from now on. So thank you, guys. And you're welcome to ask any questions. I'm going to go hopefully back to...
Thank you very much. I just need to let some more people in. Maybe come back.